Good morning. Welcome into Five Clubs here on Golf Channel. You can also listen on PGA Tour Radio. That is Channel 92 on Sirius XM. I am Gary Williams. Great to have you with. This program is always brought to you by Century Insurance, right by you. That empathetic expertise that they have, their relationships inside the game of golf with the USGA, with the First Tee, are emblematic of them doing things that they think are important. Well, Golf Pride, when it comes to grips, I was gripped for new clubs on Monday. The Align Max going on all of my new clubs, and more players at every level trust Golf Pride than any other grip company in the world. Peter Millar, everything that I've worn. Speaking of trust, when it comes to refining performance and luxury and style, nobody's really close to Peter Millar. And then, of course, that cradle of American golf, that is Pinehurst, with all that they offer you. And every time you look up, and if you go to the website and you're thinking, I want to do another trip to Pinehurst, there's something new that they have for you. The latest being the cottages at number 8. And of course, that new clubhouse and restaurant opening soon at Pinehurst number 10. Now, I don't know whether I should welcome you into Five Clubs or to Fantasy Island. Not really sure if I can pull off the Mr. Rourke. And if you get that reference, God love you, because you're of a vintage that I identify with. We got a lot to get to on this final day for us of the week. It is the final Signature Series event of the PGA Tour. Wow. It's June, it's just after Father's Day, and they just made a huge announcement yesterday, which we're going to get to in detail in a moment. But a couple of people are going to join me today, one related to the news yesterday and the other related to the major championship being conducted at the home of the PGA of America this week. Mel Reid, 4 times a participant of the Solheim Cup for Europe, and now becoming a really, really valuable, great voice when it comes to covering the game of golf, not just women's golf. I had a nice chat with her at the PGA Championship as well, but she'll be part of Live From's team there at Frisco. They've already begun their work. She's going to be with me in less than 15 minutes. And then, of course, Gabby Herzig, who's a regular contributor here to Five Clubs, one of the great writers covering the game of golf. She is being sought by everybody to give her viewpoint, and she was at the announcement yesterday of the new CEO of the PGA Tour. So she's going to be with me, bottom of the hour, her thoughts on the entire spectacle, because that was, by every single definition, that's a dog and pony show, is what they gave you yesterday, and rightfully so. And I'm going to start with that as well, but one other thing, we're going to give you our Club 5. We've got Dogs of the Week. We got a very robust hour. That's why I'm going full Mr. Rourke. I always wondered where those automobiles that he drove on Fantasy Island came from. They had no doors. All right, I digress. I read something yesterday that I would recommend to everybody as it relates to who is Brian Rolapp. He is the new CEO of the PGA Tour. And it was written by James Colgan at Golf Magazine, and you can read it at golf.com. And basically, the title of the piece is, who is he? Who is Brian Rolapp? And the first part of it, to me, is inspiring because it might be an anecdote, but it's reflective of kind of who he might be and who he is, because clearly what he said to this young media person, Kevin Clark, some people may be familiar with him. Kevin was on the Five Clubs podcast a couple of years ago because I greatly appreciate his work. He is somebody who loves golf, but he covers the National Football League. So it was 9 years ago that he was at the NFL owners' meetings, and he was pondering leaving what was a safe space to embark on something that was not as safe. And it was a thing that was going to be called The Ringer. Now, there's not much that Bill Simmons hadn't been involved with that hasn't worked out, because he's clever, he's bright, he has surrounded himself with a lot of very, very intelligent people who can share thoughts in a way that draws an audience. And they've done that. So it's not like, well, come on, he was going to The Ringer. The Ringer wasn't anything then. And Kevin Clark wasn't sure whether he should do what it was he was thinking about doing. So he had a relationship with the new CEO of the PGA Tour, Brian Rolapp, and he said to him, "What do you think?" That was kind of what the line was. And Brian Rolapp's response was, to me, a great line. And his line was, "You can make any job the best job in the world." Wow. So if you're a young media guy and you're thinking to yourself, my gosh, you know what, I'm thinking about getting married and eventually I'm going to have a family and this is kind of daunting. And like institutions give you certain securities. And Brian Rolapp is leaving an institution, and that is the National Football League. And it's not like the PGA Tour is some fledgling, oh my, it might make it, it might not. It's not that. But it is the National Football League. And he wasn't just another suit on Fifth Avenue. He was widely considered among, if not the second most important person inside that organization, with maybe a path to the commissionership of the National Football League. That's the shield, my friends. And he decided that he's going to leave. So that advice that he imparted upon a young media person 9 years ago, he is living that himself, because clearly he believes that he can make this job, the CEO job of the PGA Tour, the best job in the world. And it reminds me of a book, and I'm not going to break into a book club, and I'm certain that I have mentioned this book since we launched this program. I know I've mentioned this book since we started 5 Clubs a little bit over 4 years ago. The title of the book is Range, by a gentleman named David Epstein. He also wrote The Sports Gene, which I consider to be the most unvarnished view on athletic performance, truly physical athletic performance, which I am totally enthralled by, as everybody knows. But the book is about, the subtitle explains it all. It's about how generalists thrive in a specialized world. And that one of the most gutsy things that anybody can do in life, in their professional life, is start over. And that is what Brian Rolapp is effectively doing. He is starting over at something else that is clearly established. Like I said, the PGA Tour, been around a while, done pretty well. You look at the advertising categories, you look at where they draw from, and even though the boulevard is far more narrow than the National Football League, which is the Autobahn when it comes to interest, participation, and sponsorship and advertising, I mean, they're printing it. There's no doubt. And one of the things that Brian Rolapp has done while the National Football League has become the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to sports enterprises is take advantage of their growth by looking at other media opportunities. So when I think about what is next for him, there are a couple things that I think will be most interesting to watch as he embarks on this job. And make no mistake about it, and we'll talk to Gabby Herzig about this at the bottom of the hour, because Jay Monahan, the present commissioner of the PGA Tour, is going to stay on in some capacity until the end of his term, his contract term, which is the end of 2026. And I wonder how that's going to work. Brian's the boss, and he has an opportunity here to be the great reunifier when it comes to live and those players being where they currently are. And he spoke, and I thought, in very reserved, very prudent terms yesterday about that, not coming in here with bravado and saying, don't worry, give me 90 days and they'll all be back. He said what any smart person would say: I need to educate myself on as much as I can and lean on people who have been far more invested in this entire process than clearly I have been, because I'm coming from the outside. But here is where he comes from the inside, as somebody who has relationships with all of these media platforms, from the institutional side to the linear side to the digital side. Because the National Football League, well, you can say, why don't they leave the NBA alone on Christmas Day? Why don't they just give them that day? Well, if you can own something else, why not own it? And the National Football League pretty much owns every important day. And it's not to say that the PGA Tour can become that. They can't, and they won't. That's the one thing I'm certain that he has no issue understanding, is that there's no identity crisis in knowing what the audience is. But it doesn't mean it can't grow, and it doesn't mean that you can't be clever and effective and strategic to take media partners that you have in a previous job and apply them to a new position. So I go back to that line that he imparted to a young media person in this article that I recommend you reading to learn a little bit more about the new boss of the PGA Tour. Any job can be the best job in the world. Wow, pretty strong stuff. Going forward, I would say sponsorship, reunification, and is it possible that one of the pristine, you know what I'm talking about, sterling properties, of which I believe 5 rise above all the others, the 4 majors and the Ryder Cup. Certainly we know that probably 3 of those are completely off the table, completely. But 2, who knows? If the price is right, is he looking to buy something? You know what I'm driving at? A Ryder Cup, a PGA Championship? I don't know. That's why his first chapter is going to be so interesting. More on him coming up bottom of the hour because Gabby Herzig was with the entire spectacle that was the announcement yesterday, that which included Tiger Woods and Adam Scott and Arthur Blank. And oh, by the way, Arthur Blank knows the new CEO of the PGA Tour well as the owner of the Atlanta Falcons. All right, I've got on this little sport coat today, but it is not what the winner of Club 5 is going to get at the end of the year. We rolled it out a couple of weeks ago, and Club 5 is back on a Monday morning. So this Leroy window pane soft jacket from Peter Millar in walnut, available for you August 15th at petermillar.com. But the winner of Club 5 is not going to have to go to the website because they're going to receive it by being what we deem as the player of the year by our own metrics that are fluid. Our divisor is a very small window, unlike the world golf rankings. So let's take a look at Club 5 on this Wednesday post-U.S. Open. We will start with Russell Henley. Russell Henley won a Signature Series event. Russell Henley has additional top 10s in Signature Series events. Russell Henley just top 10 in the U.S. Open. Russell Henley is going to be on the U.S. Ryder Cup team. He's a gamer. He is number 5 in Club 5. How about the guy from up the road on I-85 at Chapel Hill Country Club, Ben Griffin, with the Aviators? He's won twice. Yes, one was a team event. Look at the stretch of golf that Ben Griffin is producing. He played exceptionally well at the PGA. He adds another top 10 at the U.S. Open. He, too, is trending very, very swiftly toward being outfitted for red, white, and blue and a Ryder Cup uniform as well. He is at number 4 as a 2-time winner this year. At number 3, he's sashaying in there with the U.S. Open trophy and the Jack Nicklaus medal around his neck. You may have some nice bling rolling into the club. You got the Jack Nicklaus medal? No, you don't, because J.J. Spawn does. And it's not just the U.S. Open. Second at the Players, another second, a third. Guy's having a hell of a year. All right, at number 2, won the Masters, won the Players, won at Pebble Beach. And I don't know if you noticed after he posted 67 early on a Sunday at a U.S. Open means that by the end of the day, whatever you were when you finished, which I think was tied for 30th, Rory McIlroy finished in the top 20 at the U.S. Open. Not a top 10, which would have rolled that to 7 straight, but nonetheless. And I think him at Portrush, and obviously he's in the field this week, makes him kind of, is he ready to recalibrate altogether? And at number 1, and he is there firmly, Scottie Scheffler, with the 3 wins, another top 10. He's got 8 straight top 10s. He's first in strokes gained total. He's first in scoring average. He's first in bounce back. He's 20th on the PGA Tour in strokes gained putting. You know what he was 2 years ago? 162nd. There is a very good chance that that window pane walnut jacket from Peter Millar is going to be at every holiday party in the greater Dallas Metroplex come Thanksgiving, because to knock him off that perch, it is not going to be easy. All right, that is your Club 5. When we continue, the KPMG Women's PGA Championship, they're going home to their new home. This is a big, big week. We will talk more about that. Gabby Herzig is going to join us as well. And we end the week the way we should always end the week, with God's creatures. Great to have you with us. It is 5 Clubs on this Wednesday Golf Channel and also SiriusXM's Channel 92. That's PGA Tour Radio. We're back with you right after this. Welcome back into Five Clubs on this Wednesday on Golf Channel. Of course, if you're leaving the home, you can listen. That is Channel 92. It's PGA Tour Radio on Sirius XM. This segment brought to you by Pinehurst, our great friends down the road, the cradle of American golf. There's always a good reason because there's always new reasons to book a trip to go to the Pinehurst Resort. All right, joining me now, she's in Frisco. You're going to hear her thoughts, her analysis throughout the week on Live From, a four-time participant for Europe in the Solheim Cup. She won on the LPGA. I love her perspective, and if you've not heard enough of it, just keep listening. You're going to love it as well. I'm speaking of Mel Reid. Good morning. Thank you for joining me from Frisco. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, early in Frisco. We're doing Live From this week, so it's a lot of fun. We've got a lot of fun guests on, and we had a great day yesterday. We're on air, I think, for 5 hours, and today we're on for 5 hours. But it's been good so far. It's been a lot of fun.
I try to explain to people who haven't been there yet. And Frisco at large it's like every time you turn around, there's like another 22-story building going up, and it's a hotel or it's something else. But the golf part of it is like Disneyland. You went there, I think, a couple of years ago. What was your first impression of it then, and what is it now?
Well, obviously, it's Texas, so it's absolutely ginormous. The property is huge. They've got an unbelievable hotel on site. The actual development of it is extremely impressive. You know, they want it to be the home of the PGA, and it certainly is that. It's got everything for every kind of golfer, whatever your ability is. They do great things with developing like junior golf, so like involvement in the schools. They have this, I think it's the biggest putting green in North America called the dance floor, which the local people can just come in, public can come in, you don't need to pay to go on that. It's a lot of fun. You just rent a putter if you're new to the game. And so the actual development of it is extremely exciting because it's for no matter your age, your gender, what ability of golfer you are. Like, this is almost like a Disneyland for golfers. It's like the hub of it. So it's a very interesting place, but it's got everything for whatever you need. It's there here in Frisco at this golf course. And the headquarters.
Mel, yeah, I think that's said perfectly. The East Course, you know, the West Course there's a little bit more elevation. There's a sense that it's, you know, a little bit more cozy compared to this big scale, you know, big landscape. As you try to get your wits about the way this golf course is going to play, what stands out about the East Course there at Fields Ranch?
There is a massive. They're a lot wider than I was anticipating. There's a bunch of bunkers. That's kind of its protection. And on most holes, actually, it's not really in play, but it is. There's a lot of penalty areas. So if you are a little bit off, you can certainly get into trouble quite quickly. There's Bermuda grass as well. So around the greens, if you are missing greens, they're quite undulating greens. So it's difficult to chip off. It can get very kind of gnarly around there, but to me, it's just massive. Like, a lot of players I was talking to, it's like what a big walk it is. And then aside from that, we're in June in Texas.
Yes.
So the wind is blowing a hoolie. Like, you would have seen us on set. You know, luckily I wear my hair up, but for the other two, Amanda and Anna, their hair was whipping in their face. So even on set, it's windy. It's so windy out there. That's the big defense out here. It has to be windy. Otherwise, I think the players are going to shoot really low this week, but it's hot as well. It is hot. It is like 95 degrees and it feels like an oven out there. So that's going to be a massive factor this week for the players.
You came close in this event in 2019, finishing third. Give me your view of this Rota. They'll go to all corners. And do you think Frisco, it's going to have to fit in because this is anchor for not only this event, but when it comes to the PGA, which they're going to have there for the first time in a couple of years. Does the overall Rota kind of have a good vibe to you?
So, yeah, it used to be the LPGA Championship, and then when KPMG came in, it really elevated not just the tournament, it actually elevated women's golf, in my opinion.
Yes.
They were the first ones to kind of say, look, this is what the prize money is going to be, and then all the other majors had to kind of level up to that. And then we started playing like these unbelievable golf courses, you know, like Baltusrol, Congressional. Like, we've got some amazing Olympic fields. Like, we've got so many incredible golf courses on the Rota, which is fun for us because, you know, we get to see what Tiger did, or, you know, all these legendary players play these golf courses, and now we're playing them on the rota. So it's always been KPMG for the players has always been a very fun event because we get to play these incredible historic golf courses. Now we've got Frisco on it. Frisco's obviously very, very new. It's only 2 or 3 years old. It feels a little bit like that. Like I feel like it still needs to find its feet a little bit in this rota, but over the years, I'm sure it will mature enough to be a big golf course on this rota. But it is certainly, to me, it feels like a modern golf course. I feel like, we're talking so much about power in the men's game, and this is exactly what this golf course is. It just feels massive. I think off the back tees, they can get it over 8,000 yards, um, which, yes, I feel like it's cool to have that kind of golf course, but I still enjoy the old school. It doesn't necessarily have to be massive, I don't think. I think if you take the fairways in, especially for the women players who are so accurate off the tee, I mean, not many players will miss the fairways this week. So it's going to be an interesting addition to the rotor, but I certainly think that once it matures, it could fit in quite nicely.
Mel, you mentioned KPMG. Money's great, but money has to be invested in ways that you think that it really can impact things. And it has lifted, and it has really been the impetus for whether it be the USGA, the R&A, obviously with Chevron making the commitment that they have made, that all of these major championships have seen an influx of money. Is it already time to be able to identify the tangible impact that these purses are having on the women's game, or do we need a little bit more time?
It's a funny question. We had Stacey Lewis on the desk yesterday, and I was on the board with Stacey. She's an amazing person. She's obviously still got a player head on, but she's very intelligent. And we've had many discussions about this. Like, the prize money going up is fantastic. Obviously, it means that the women are getting in my opinion, the respect that they deserve. And it's incredible that these tournaments like KPMG are elevating that. But for me, there's a little bit of a gap. I feel like we're still not getting the exposure, the correct TV time, the TV coverage. Fans at home don't really know the players outside of golf. And so I think that that's a little bit of a discrepancy. So we need to try and invest something in that. And I think that that comes from the players as well. I think the players could help with that. And I think if everyone then gets on board and we find, with Craig Kessler coming in, I think
Yes.
from what my understanding, he's going to get that. And I think he's very aware of that. And he's a lot of positive feedback from people that have met him. He's a sharp guy. So let's see, give it another 5 years, and I think that gap will be bridged. There'll be a lot more exposure in the women's game. But the prize money is great, but we still need fans through the door. We still need people watching women's golf, and that to me is the biggest gap right now that we need to close.
Let me ask you about a couple of players. Let me start with Nelly. How would you describe her year thus far?
Eddie's been playing great. She's got the best stroke average on tour, just over 69. She's one, I think, in strokes gain off tee. She's two strokes gain approach. She's got, obviously, it's Nelly course. She's got all the ingredients, but she does have all the ingredients this year, similar to the last year. She's just not winning. It's getting harder to win out here, and I think that it also just goes to show what an unbelievable year she had last year, winning 7 times. I've always been concerned at major championships. I feel like sometimes she can't stop the bad play. So when she gets on a bad roll, it's a bit of a mudslide. She proved to me that she has got more control of that at the US Women's Open. That's the one event that she wants to win. I can guarantee you that, being an American, that's the one that you want to win. On the third round, she went out of 4 over, and I thought, oh, here we go again. But no, she came back 3 under the last 3 holes, ended up finishing tied second. And to me, that was a huge moment for Nelly. I think that she's in a really good headspace. I feel like her team is tighter than ever. Jess is here this week as well, her sister. So that's always a great sign for me, because I feel like Jess has such a powerful impact on her in a positive way. I think Nelly's the one to watch this week. I really do. I think she's looking good. Her game's in great shape, and I would absolutely love her to do it this week.
I'm curious, and this is not necessarily specifically applying it to Nelly. As a player, how did you deal with expectations? Did you, as best you could, make it be like, well, that's complimentary. That should embolden me. I should feel more confident. But at times, did it feel like a burden? How did you handle expectation?
It's a great question. Sometimes I handled it great, sometimes not so great. I think it all comes down to preparation. I think that as a golfer, it's such an individual sport, isn't it? That you have to be your own biggest fan. And I think that the more expectation you put on yourself, in a way, is better because then all the other voices and all the other expectations from everybody else doesn't ever get close to your own expectation. So that's what I try to do is try as much as I could to kind of just hone in on what I wanted to do that week, what would be a good week for me, go through my processes, prepare the way that me and my team had kind of written down and gone, right, this is what we're going to do this week. And so that was always a battle for me, but is kind of staying in my own bubble. I'm kind of against the grain with golfers. I grew up in team sports, and it's always been a battle for me to kind of take ownership of myself. I've always wanted a lot of input from my team, but whenever I took ownership of myself, that was usually when I was the most calm because then it was literally down to me. And I was very comfortable in what I was doing, and I backed myself a lot better when I was doing that. But it was so against my personality that that was always something I struggled with, to be honest, throughout my whole career.
Before I let you go, I know you have this obligation of making picks. You sit on that desk, you have to do it. I'm not trying to early call and get it early from live from, but what does your intuition tell you? Are there a couple names that keep kind of stirring in your mind that you like this week?
Obviously Nelly. I think the Japanese players as well, the EY twins are playing incredible golf. They just pretty much dominated on the Japanese tour, and they're coming over here and they're doing pretty good over here as well. I feel like they're always up there. Mal Saigo, she's played great the last two majors. Obviously, she won Chevron. I think she finished fourth at US Women's Open. So she's built for major championships. She's very calm demeanor. She's got the perfect temperament to have patience for a major championship. I also think Ronnie Yim, she lives here in Texas and Dallas. So she's very used to the wind. She's very used to the heat at this time of year. And she's very comfortable here. Again, she's fantastic in majors. Got a very experienced caddy on her bag. And then I've got to give some love to European girls. I think Charlie Hull. She loves wind play. She's very creative. And Charlie Hull's Charlie Hull. I mean, you talk about expectations. She backs herself better than anyone I've ever known. And I think that it's only a matter of time for her to win a major.
Well, listen, I appreciate how you're digging in on this new job, plus the podcast with Kira K. Dixon, Quiet Please. I highly recommend that. I look forward to doing this again. Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, Gary.
All right, there is Mel Reid again. You can see her all week on live from Frisco for the KPMG Women's PGA Championship. When we continue, Gabby Herzig, she was there yesterday for the rollout and the announcement of the new CEO of the PGA Tour. Her thoughts on that. Coming up next, right here, bottom of the hour, it is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel. Back after this. Back in on 5 Clubs. You saw from that little open, going to be joined here momentarily by one of the best writers covering the sport and the game of golf. This segment being brought to you by Peter Millar. When it comes to anything you need 3, 4, 5, 10 swim trunks, they got those. You want to play golf every day of the week? They got everything you could ever imagine. And of course, when it comes to from the boardroom to a soccer game, refining performance, luxury, and style, for the better part of 2 decades, it is Peter Millar. All right, joining me now, you just saw the images of her. We need to add some pictures of her caddying, which she did recently at final qualifying for the U.S. Open for her brother. I'm speaking, of course, of Gabby Herzig, great writer for The Athletic. She was up there yesterday outside of Hartford for the announcement of the new CEO of the PGA Tour. She's back in New York City. Good morning. How you doing?
Morning, Gary. Yeah, I don't know if anyone needs to see those caddying photos. I was struggling pretty bad, but I'm back in New York now. Had a great day in Hartford yesterday, meeting the new CEO of the PGA Tour. So a lot to talk about.
There is. This is a big deal. You look at the few people who have held the post of commissioner, and even though that title is different for him, make no mistake, he's the boss. And he will be running the PGA Tour as this tour goes forward. Give me what stood out for you, because there were a lot of people there, including Tiger Woods, who made the trip up there for what was a photo op and a press conference and Brian Rolapp answering some questions. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I think what stood out to me off the bat was just the presence of Brian Rolapp and kind of the effect that he had on those people around him. Tiger was there, Adam Scott was there, Arthur Blank was there. There were a lot of important people standing in that room and posing for that photo. And I think the general impression is that, you know, we have one of the most powerful people in sports coming into this role, someone who has serious influence, serious experience, and is heading up the entire thing. I think for a bit, the messaging was around how the new CEO would be the leader of PGA Tour Enterprises, the for-profit entity of the PGA Tour. But it's very clear that Brian Rolapp is running the whole ship here. And he comes in with so much experience. The players are even talking about how it's cool to see some kind of an outsider coming into the PGA Tour with a, you know, fresh new look at all of this. So what struck me the most was really the excitement of the day, the positivity from everyone that I spoke to, and the whole spectacle was really cool to see, kind of this changing of the guards, if you will.
Yeah, Gabby, I want to follow on what you said about like who was there. Brian Rolapp's experience means that, you know, obviously being in the National Football League, you're dealing with everybody wants a piece of the NFL. So here he has all these relationships with all these various media outlets, and whether it be networks or whether it be new digital media, streaming services. In the National Football League specifically, because of the infusion of cash from SSG and all of the like intellectual firepower of these individuals from other sports, like Arthur Blank being there, like that to me, like this is the dawn of a new day. And I'm not trying to conflate this, but I really believe that this is somebody who's coming not just from that office, but from a position of power in the office of the National Football League, which makes this almost feel like a coup. Is that fair?
A coup, I mean, that might be, I guess you could think of it that way. I mean, it's a huge get for the PGA Tour, I would say. I think that's why you're seeing so much excitement. I mean, Brian Rolapp was what many people believe to be the successor to Roger Goodell at the NFL. He's the number two, obviously has huge connections, as you alluded to. He was the main negotiator for the NFL's $110 billion media rights deals. And the PGA Tour has a media rights negotiation coming up of its own. The media rights contracts expire in 2031. And it's going to come to the table pretty soon here. And to have someone like him with all the connections and all the people in the industry that he knows and has proven success to in the past, it's such a huge resource for the PGA Tour. But generally, yeah, it's definitely a changing of the guard, a new era coming in. Another thing that stood out to me about Rolapp specifically was how he emphasized that he's going to respect tradition, but also not let it hinder what he wants to do and the changes that he wants to make. I think some of the things that we've seen in the PGA Tour over the past few years have definitely been representative of wanting to preserve what they have always done and kind of keeping things the old way. But we're really going to see a push for evolution now. And I don't think that some of those kind of older voices are going to be able to hold it back because of the new presence of Brian Rolapp and others that are stepping in.
Gabby, I think that to me is the most interesting aspect, is that line you said, respecting traditions. But to me, the idea of, you know, this players run tour, and I think that there are elements to whether it be the bylaws or the way that things are done that are a little antiquated. For like, do you want to be a big time sports enterprise, or do you want to be what you currently are? So with that being said, do you think that like just the narrative that it's a players run league, that we're not going to be saying that in 3 to 5 years?
I think you could be right, Gary, honestly. I mean, one of the huge points that Rolapp said during his press conference and afterwards was, you know, usually when you listen to the fans and you move in accordance with what the fans want, things fall into place naturally. And I think, you know, we're seeing it a lot this year on the PGA Tour with the Fan Forward initiative and some of the changes they've been making. But there's been a lot of things that have happened because the players want them to happen or the players don't want things to happen. I mean, I'll point to the Tour Championship format changes just right off the bat. there was strong indication earlier this year, as I reported, that we would switch to a bracket style format, maybe integrating match play, or some kind of huge format change. But it ended up being kind of just a more exclusive version of the Tour Championship as it is, 4 days, 72 hole stroke play. And from my understanding, that was because the players didn't want to experiment with match play. They didn't think it was representative of the best competition for the season-ending championship, which is completely valid. But then again, maybe there's an experiment to be had there where you're listening to the fans. So I think Brian Rolapp obviously understands that, working with the NFL for so many years and listening to what people want over there has really worked for them. So I think it's a huge point. The strategic sports group investment is another thing that he was very excited about. And the initial idea there was to use that $1.5 billion as player equity grants. And I asked him yesterday about what he plans to do with those funds and if he has any ideas, and he wouldn't share them just yet. But I'm not sure if that idea is going to stand or what the future is with the strategic sports group investment in general. So there's a lot up in the air. And I think you're right. It maybe could be a situation where, new leadership takes control and directs this thing how they think it should be run.
My intuition tells me that's where we're going. Look, you play golf, and the better you play golf, the more interesting the product. But we run sports, and I'm talking about SSG, and I'm talking about somebody like Brian Rolapp, and trust us to make this product more profitable for you. You guys focus on playing the game of golf. And it's not that their voices are not going to be valuable and not be heard. And Brian, I thought, was very smart to talk about Tiger yesterday and about his investment intellectually in this process and what they've been doing over the last couple of years. But I think that's going to be interesting, one of the more interesting things to watch. One of the other things is Jay Monahan. Look, this can be tricky. It could be awkward. It could be uncomfortable. The idea of him fulfilling his term. What did that look like? What do you think that's going to look like if he does, in fact, have a role through the end of 2026? Not 25, 26.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, excuse me, Jay Monahan will obviously be fulfilling his contract through 2026. And from my understanding, it is going to be in more of a ceremonial role, but there also is a huge, important transition period here. I mean, Brian Rolapp, again, such a successful American sports leader, but not really a golf guy. And Jay Monahan, as we've seen throughout his tenure, he really is someone that has understood the game. He played in college. He has those relationships with sponsors, with media partners, everyone surrounding the PGA Tour. So there's definitely going to be kind of that transition period where he's out there, he's still doing his kind of inside the ropes duties, as a couple people described it to me, meeting with people on site, having a presence, handing the Tour Championship trophy over, those kinds of responsibilities. I think we're going to see Jay Monahan continue to be in those positions, but at the same time, just helping Brian Rolapp come on board and really transition into this new role where it is a little bit uncharted territory for him, but he's such an experienced leader. He'll be able to blend in very seamlessly. It'll just be a matter of sharing information between two people who have had so much success in their fields and making that transition as smooth as possible.
Last thing with respect to what happened yesterday, did anybody pose the question about acquisition, about him and the idea of the pursuit of purchasing a property, hypothetically, whether it be a major championship or a team competition? Did that come up at all?
It didn't come up, but I have been hearing those sorts of things floating around recently. I mean, now that the PGA Tour is a for-profit entity, yep, I can see that would be some kind of move that they would be looking to make. But Brian Rolapp was actually he held his cards very close to his chest yesterday. I think he's very aware of the fact that he's not actually started his job yet and doesn't want to speak too soon. It sounds like he'll be starting in August, or around a couple of weeks before the Tour Championship, and maybe we'll hear from him then. So we'll definitely see what happens with all of that. But Gary, I think it's a good bet. I think that's something to keep our eyes on for sure.
Last thing, I need to get a grand takeaway from you from the U.S. Open. The thing that stood out most, whether it be how the winner won, whatever it may be, what will stand up in your mind as the indelible image of the 125th U.S. Open covering it for you? I
mean, it's hard not to think of that final putt as the indelible image, but for me, I mean, thinking back to JJ Spawn's front nine, he shot a 40 on the front nine, and everyone counted it out of this golf tournament. I mean, it kind of just, it shows how relatable the win was, to me at least. I mean, going out there and shooting 5 over on the front, and then almost feeling like you have nothing to lose, and then being able to have that freedom to go out there and shoot 32 on the back nine. If anything, that was the coolest part for me, is kind of the turnaround that he had within that day. He had a whole roller coaster of his own, in addition to the Oakmont roller coaster and the weather and the stoppages and the rain and the honestly nearly unplayable conditions. You never know if your ball is just going to end up in a puddle like Sam Burns did. So for me, JJ Spawn's whole arc throughout the day will be the most memorable thing. Just seeing his scorecard at the end of a major championship, 40-32. I don't think we've talked about that enough.
No, you're right. Listen, so great to get your input from being there yesterday. It's kind of nice to have you every week. I don't know. I don't know where the cadence of where we're going with you is. Everybody wants more of Gabby. Listen, have a great rest of your week. Thank you as always.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it.
All right, there is Gabby Herzig, so proud to call her contributor here at 5 Clubs. And again, one of the great writers covering the sport for The Athletic. We take a break. We got picks, not just one golf tournament, but 2. Update the standings as well. And dogs, unleash the hounds. They're coming on 5 Clubs. Back after this. Back in on this Wednesday, it is 5 Clubs, and this segment is brought to you by Golf Pride. You know, I did a fitting on Monday, and all Golf Pride grips available, whatever clubs it was, because they are the most trusted grip company. Doesn't matter what level of the player, and if you looked at the players trying to win a U.S. Open, Golf Pride dominating as they should, because they are the standard when it comes to grips. The standard here on a Wednesday, before we walk on out of here for the balance of the week, is to give you the things that give us the most joy. And those are dogs. And dogs around golf are unbeatable. We had to put them on the shelf last week because we were at Oakmont. Should have done the dogs of Oakmont. I'm sure there are several that roam that property, but we are back at it here on this Wednesday. So let's take a look at our entries. And again, send them in, dogs@5clubsgolf.com. That is Keely helping out her brother Justice working the range at the golf club at Buchholz in Buchholz, Germany. That is Sis Buchholz's dog. Now, the owner of the next dog is Robert Costa. That's at Findlay. I played Findlay many times in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, the home of Carolina golf. That is Brady, a 3-year-old Bernese mountain dog, roaming that golf course in Chapel Thrill. That is Katie Davis's dog, Rossi. He is the golf course superintendent at Royal Oaks Country Club in Dallas. Great place. Look at that image on the left. How powerful is that? And then finally, does that not melt your heart? That is Tilly at Sunnybrook Golf Club in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. And Tilly can run. You know how I know? Run, Tilly, run. That is why we love the dogs. 5-month-old Fox Red Lab. I don't think that I've ever seen a Fox Red Lab. I might need to get a little Fox Red Lab in my life, and someone at my house is going, what did you just say? By the way, while I was at Oakmont going through the merchandise building, you know what I bought? I bought a 125th U.S. Open Oakmont dog bowl, corksicle. And my dogs are like, I don't know if we like this material, it's metal, we prefer plastic. You give them what they want, they better get used to that corksicle dog bowl that they've got now in the bathroom. All right, we've got 2 golf tournaments to show you our picks, but before that, let's update the standings. Not a lot of movement last week. Taylor Zarzer with his 3 wins remains on top. Johnson Wagner also has picked 3 winners this week. Emma, Gil, myself, Jay, and there is Brendan DeYoung. One of the most putrid, pitiful, pathetic performances we've seen in the history of picking golf tournaments since we've been doing this for 6 months. All right, so with that, let's get to our picks. We've got a women's major, the KPMG Women's PGA Championship. Nellie's always going to get some love. So Taylor, Brendan DeYoung, Jay Billis all picked Nellie Korda. Runing Yin is who I'm picking. She's from there. Mel Reid loves her. She plays great in majors. Gil goes with Lydia Ko, Jin Young Ko for Emma Carpenter. And Johnson Wagner, I think, has picked Brooke Henderson. I think he might have picked her at a couple of PGA Tour events. He picks her in every event. I don't get it. All right. Now we transition from the KPMG Women's PGA to the Travelers Championship, the last Signature Series event. So that means tons of money. I'm going with Sam Burns. I don't know if he's fried, but his form has been great for a month. Gil with Xander, Scotty Scheffler for Emma, Cam Young for both Johnson Wagner and Taylor Zarzour, and Billis picks Hovland. And Brendan Young, for the first time all season, picks Scotty Scheffler. You better pick him in every tournament he plays in from here until the end of the season if he wants to make a dent in him being in the basement where he's been residing the entire year. Little reminder, next week, I will actually be originating from Colorado Springs because it's the first domestic event for the Underrated Tour that, of course, is the passion and driving force of Steph Curry's interest in the game of golf. So Colorado Springs next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. For all of us here at Signature Sports Group and 5 Clubs, have a great rest of the week. Enjoy all the golf. We'll see you Monday from Colorado Springs.